Hey, it's Chad.
And Sarah.
And here's 5 things you didn't know about Maker's Mark.
And good for you if you did. Let's start off by getting a few of the basics out of the way before we dive into the juicy stuff. Maker's Mark is a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey that is non-age stated, but rather aged to taste, which typically puts it around 6 to 7 years old. All barrels start at the top floors of the warehouses, which are the highest in temperature due to the Kentucky climate. A barrel will spend a minimum of 3 years at the top before it comes down to lower levels to finish its aging. The barrels are all moved by hand, by the way.
Maker's sold their first bottle of whiskey in 1958, and since then it's been known for its wheated mash bill and its iconic red wax. The brand started 5 years earlier in 1953 by T. William Bill Samuel Sr. and his wife Margie. But did you know the Samuels' first order of business was burning the only copy of a 170-year-old family recipe for bourbon? That's right, the brand started off blazing their trail by putting the family recipe for a more traditional style bourbon up in flames. Legend says a couple of curtains also went up in flames by mistake.
I heard Margie never liked those curtains anyway. Speaking of Margie Samuels, did you know just how involved she was with the brand? She designed the Maker's bottle shape, as well as the label, and came up with the name Maker's Mark. Margie took inspiration from pewter artisans who would sign their work with the mark of the maker. She even decided to dip the bottles in red wax to help them stand out on store shelves, and dip the first few bottles herself using the deep fryer in her kitchen. It's easy to see why Margie was the first woman directly connected to a distillery to be inducted into the Bourbon Hall of Fame. It's said that Margie, with all her marketing efforts, is the reason you buy your first bottle of Maker's, and Bill, with his distilling efforts, is the reason you buy your second.
Going back to another Margie contribution in the Maker's logo, a lot of us know the star is for Star Hill Farms, where they lived, the S is for Samuels, but did you know the Roman numeral that represents 4 should technically be a 6? The 4 came from Bill Samuels Sr. being a 4th-generation distiller, but it was discovered later that he's actually a 6th generation. By the time this fact was brought to light, the Maker's Mark logo was already iconic, and there was no reason to change it. Before we get into our next fact, we want to pause for a second and tell you about our home on the internet. It's whiskyambitions.com. It's where you can get t-shirts, hats, hoodies, coins, Glencairns, rocks glasses, copitas, water glasses, bottle cut candles, more, always coming soon. That's whiskyambitions.com.
You can also become a patron at patreon.com and join our community for as little as $1 a month. That's where we release our exclusive barrel picks, the opportunity to participate in barrel picks, discounts at whiskyambitions.com, another round with Chad and Sarah, and more.
And now, back to the list.
At the time of recording this video, a 750 milliliter bottle of Maker's Mark costs around $25. But did you know that back in 1958 it sold for around $7? And that was considered high at the time for a bottle of bourbon. Right out of the gate, Maker's Mark was positioned as something a little more unique than its competitors. And a 1960s ad campaign emphasized this, that led with the new tagline, "It tastes expensive, and is." Bourbon in general was not very popular at the time, so many saw this as a risky move. Did it catapult the brand into new popularity? Nope. Sales stayed about the same, but at least it didn't hurt the brand.
And lastly, we haven't talked about proof. Maker's was 90 proof when it was launched in the late 1950s. It's 90 proof today, so it's always been that proof, right? Not quite. Did you know in February of 2013, during a time of record popularity for Maker's, the company announced that it was decreasing the bourbon's proof from 90 to 84? This did not sit well with consumers. When faced with not being able to find the bottle on the shelf versus drinking a version of Maker's that was 3% lower in alcohol by volume, the public told the company they better figure it out. Some of the 84 proof Maker's did make it to the shelves, although most of it stayed at the distillery since it was produced for less than 1 week before going back to the original 90 proof because of customer response. Guess you have to say Maker's listens to their customers.
And you know we have to leave you with a bonus fact, so here it is. Everyone knows Maker's for their red wax dips, but did you know they aren't just iconic, but also trademarked? Yep, Maker's has the trademark for any color wax that drips down the neck. So while you do see other brands using wax on their bottles, legally, none of them should be dripping down the neck.
Let us know what facts you found most interesting and who you would like to see done next. We also have more facts about Maker's, so let us know if you'd like to see a part 2. If you haven't subscribed to us already, you can do so by clicking on the screen, as well as hop over to another video. Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Chad.
Until next time, drink more bourbon.